My 7-year-old daughter, Emma, told me to run away. She looked me dead in the eye, voice steady, and said the words like it wasn't even strange. It started on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I just picked her up from school. We were driving home in silence when she suddenly said, "Daddy, you need to run away." I glanced at her in the rearview mirror, waiting for a giggle or a smirk, but she wasn't joking. Her face was serious, pale even. "What do you mean?" I asked, chuckling nervously. She shrugged and stared out the window. "I just think you should leave, before she finds out." "Before who finds out?" I asked, eyebrows raised. But she didn't answer. When we got home, she went straight to her room and shut the door. She's never done that before, not without asking for a snack or turning on cartoons. I brushed it off. Kids are weird sometimes. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she had a fight at school. Maybe she was just being 7. The next morning, she seemed back to normal, eating cereal, humming the Paw Patrol theme, asking me where socks go when they disappear in the dryer. But as I kissed her on the head and grabbed my keys, she looked up at me and said, "You shouldn't go." I paused. "To work?" She nodded. "You should go away instead, somewhere far." I smiled and ruffled her hair. "Sweetheart, if I don't go to work, we don't get to eat ice cream on Saturdays." But again, her face was serious. "There are more important things than ice cream." I laughed it off. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the weirdness of it. My daughter is imaginative, sure, but this was different. This wasn't playing make-believe. This was urgent. Later that day, I got a call from an unknown number while I was at work. I ignored it, assuming it was spam. But then, a text came through. Just a single sentence. "She knows." No context, no sender ID. I froze. Immediately, I called Emma's school to check if she was all right. The receptionist told me she was in her classroom safe and sound. I tried to let it go, but the rest of my day was filled with unease. My boss said I looked distracted in meetings. I fumbled through reports. And on the drive home, I noticed a black car that seemed to follow me for at least 10 blocks. It would speed up when I did, slow down when I turned. When I finally pulled into my driveway, it drove off without stopping. That night, Emma was already in bed by the time I got out of the shower. She usually waited for me to tuck her in, but not this time. I peeked into her room. She was lying under the covers, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. "Hey, you okay?" She nodded slowly, but her lips were pressed tight. "You sure?" "I heard Mommy crying today." That stopped me cold. Her mother, my ex-wife, hadn't been around in almost a year. She left after our divorce, moved across the country. We hadn't heard from her in months. "You heard her crying?" She nodded again. "She was outside the window, but it wasn't really her." I stepped closer. "Sweetheart, are you having nightmares?" "No," she said softly. "I was awake, and I know it wasn't really her because she kept calling you by the wrong name." I didn't know what to say to that. I kissed her forehead, told her everything was okay, and left the room with a growing knot in my chest. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a door slamming. It was barely 6 a.m. I rushed downstairs in a panic. The front door was cracked open. Emma stood there in her pajamas, barefoot, just staring outside. "What are you doing?" I whispered, my heart pounding. She didn't turn around. "She's coming." I gently pulled her back inside, locked the door, and carried her back to bed. The following week, things got worse. I started getting anonymous emails. Some were blank, Others had attachments, photos of me at work, outside our home, eating lunch. They were taken from a distance, always slightly blurry, always dated the same day they were received. One had a subject line that simply read, "She's not done with you." I reported them to IT. They told me the sender used a burner account, untraceable. I changed my passwords, stopped using public Wi-Fi, started watching my back. But the messages kept coming. Then, last Friday, everything fell apart. I came home from work and found Emma sitting on the couch with a woman. A woman I hadn't seen in over a year. Her mother. "Lauren?" I said, stunned. "What are you doing here?" She stood slowly like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. "Just came to check on my daughter." "Since when?" She tilted her head. "Since I realized she's not safe with you." That sentence hit me like a punch to the chest. "Excuse me?" She said, "She's been calling me, telling me about the messages, about the voices, about your behavior." I looked at Emma, who suddenly wouldn't meet my eyes. "Sweetheart, you told Mommy that." She didn't respond. She just stared at her hands. "I think," Lauren said carefully, "it's time she stays with me for a while." I stepped back, stunned. "You're not taking her. You don't have a choice. I already filed an emergency custody order." "You can't be serious." She pulled out a stack of papers. "I'm very serious." The court hearing was scheduled for the following week. She was staying in town until then, and until the hearing, she insisted Emma stay with her at a hotel. I wanted to scream. I wanted to protest. But Emma looked at me and said, "It's better this way. I don't want you to get hurt." My heart shattered. That night, I stayed in the house alone. It was the first time in years I didn't say goodnight to her in person. Her toys were still scattered in the living room. Her drawing on the fridge showed our little stick figure family holding hands. But her presence was gone, and I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what she said. "I don't want you to get hurt." Why would she say that? The next day, I started investigating. Not ghosts or monsters, real things. I looked into Lauren's life, her phone number, her recent activities, and that's when I found something strange. She hadn't booked a hotel under her name. She hadn't filed anything with the court. And her old address didn't exist anymore. When I called the police, they ran the name and said she hadn't been in the state since last year. Her license hadn't been renewed. Her social media accounts were deleted. And then they asked me the question that froze my blood. "Are you sure the woman who picked up your daughter was really your ex-wife?" I went completely still. I'd never once seen her ID, never once verified. I just believed it was her. They traced the cameras from my street. The footage was gone, corrupted. They filed the missing child report immediately, but I already knew it was too late. Emma had tried to warn me, tried to save me, tried to get me to run, and I did the opposite. Now it's been 4 weeks. The case is cold. They haven't found Emma. No sign of Lauren. No DNA match. Nothing. But last night, I got another email. No text, no subject line. Just a photo. Emma, sitting on a bench, holding a teddy bear. And behind her, a woman whose face was just slightly off. The eyes too far apart, the jaw too narrow. Almost like someone wearing someone else's skin. There was a timestamp on the bottom, 1 hour before the email was sent. I forwarded it to the police. They're investigating, but I know they won't find her. Because whoever or whatever took Emma knew exactly how to hide. And now I finally understand what my daughter meant. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a ghost. It was someone real. Someone watching us, studying us. And I ignored the signs. If I had run, left town, changed our names, disappeared, maybe she'd still be here. But I didn't. I stayed. I did the opposite. And now the only thing I have left is this warning. If your child tells you something doesn't feel right, even if it sounds ridiculous, listen. Don't question, don't